Now, Muslims are often attacked around the area of child marriage, and I'm going to teach you how to argue this point from a rational perspective and flip it on its head and say why it's a good thing. Now, all the non-Muslims listening in, buckle up, because what I'm going to say is going to make complete sense at the end of it. And if it doesn't, I'm happy to hear your disagreements in the comments. It's a meaty subject, so forgive me, but I have to go through it step by step. First, let's say that child marriage universally from year dot was global. It isn't something within the Muslim world. It isn't something in Africa. Europe had child marriage throughout its history up until modern times. For example, the UK had child marriage, I think it was the 16th, 17th century, at age 7, and it was perfectly legal. So the question here is why? Why would anyone do that? Were they all pedophiles or, perverts? That's what you would have to argue were the majority of the people of the world. Your own ancestors, not my ancestors, but European ancestors, your own forefathers. I'm going to argue, no, they weren't. They were living in a reality that necessitated this, and they made a moral choice. And that's important because those attacking Islam claim that they are standing on a moral vantage point and looking down at Muslims. And I'm saying, no, you're not. You are immoral. Those people who did that were completely moral, including your own ancestors. Imagine a time when life was short and brutal. So, for example, you have a daughter and you want to marry a man. Now, that man is part of a tribe and he goes out hunting and, killing animal, and he fights lions and he fights bandits, and neighboring tribes come and try to attack him. And if he gets bitten by a snake, a scorpion, who cares? He dies. At that point, and this happens all the time throughout history in pre-modern man. Yeah. At that point, he has a wife and children. Who's going to look after the wife and children? And that's the key point. The reason why these marriages occurred wasn't because they said, he's got nice eyes and nice hairstyle, I want to marry him. No, the primary concern of the parent was, if he cannot keep my daughter safe, what's going to happen to her? What's going to happen to their children? So they married into a tribe. They married into an extended family. Because if he ever died, if anything ever happened to him, they would ensure that their daughter was safe and secure. So that was the primary concern, safety and security. It wasn't how good looking he was or how well they got on. Although I'm sure that was bonuses, but it just wasn't the priority. And I'm sure that makes sense. They were acting in a moral way, absolutely correctly, for the benefit of their daughter and her children. What drove ages younger was the fact that if you're in a small tribe and you're a poor person and you see a person who can secure your daughter's future in safety and security, you're going to want to make sure that the eligible person and that powerful clan, extended family, tribe, whatever, put your daughter first. So often people would go and they would say, look, I've got a very young daughter. Can you, why don't we tie up now and marry? Because you don't want the next person doing that, because the life of your daughter is utmost. You don't want her starving to death. You don't want her bad things to happen to her. You don't want her enslaved. You don't want her dying. You don't want her children dying. All horrible things that are perfectly possible to happen. In fact, will happen if she doesn't have that security. So you tie in first. Again, that's a moral decision. That's none of the parties are acting immorally. They are trying to ensure the safety and security of their daughter. Not like the Western liberal will say is some sort of perversion of the past. These people weren't perverted. It's your Western liberal mind that is perverted and projects that on your historical ancestors. And that's why Islam allowed it. Because if Islam didn't allow it, let's imagine Islam was like you Western liberals and it said, no, you have to marry at 18, right? Then you would have had millions and millions of women in the past who simply had no protector, no protection, because they didn't marry into families, they didn't marry into clans, and they only cared about what they felt with the nice, lovely eyes of the guys that they particularly got on with. So that society would completely malfunction. and millions of women would be destitute, not to mention their children. So in effect, Islam knew that that's how society needed. That was the moral reality of the time, and Islam accepted that. It was a pre-Islamic thing, and Islam adopted it because guess what? That's exactly what was needed. It was the right thing to do at that time. Fast forward now. Now we're in the modern world, and guess what? Security is no longer the primary worry of parents. They're not worried that a lion's going to kill the husband. They're not worried that he's going to get gangrene on his leg because he got a cut and die. The neighbouring tribe necessarily is not going to come and hunt him down, or he's going to get killed by bandits. Generally, security was everywhere, and wealth was as well. So now you don't need to worry about security. And so why would you want to marry your daughter for security reasons? You see the logic? You see why you've changed? You see why everything's changed? Because the reality is different. So you don't need to worry about security. So the primary thing is now happiness, right? I want to be happy. So again, that's how society changed. But here's the sneaky thing about that. What Europeans did after colonizing and becoming rich off colonization is, instead of going, due to our new wealth, we've got a new reality and we can marry for happiness, and that's a good thing. Let's make the rest of the world follow in our happiness. What they said is, look at those people who are poor in the poor world marrying young. Something they themselves did up until the 17th century. Yeah. In fact, far later in many European countries and America, where up in just less than 100 years ago, they were marrying girls aged 10. Yeah. In some states. So in effect, they didn't need to do that. They changed, but instead of embracing the world and saying, hey, this is a good thing, let's make everyone wealthy, what they instead did is they looked down and used it as a supremacist idea to say, oh, the reason why they married young is because they're perverts. Our ancestors, they whitewash that history and they look at the poor people of the world and say, look, they're evil, they're child marriage, they got a backward culture. Their own culture accepted it when it was in need of their time, but now they cannot accept it for the rest of the poor people of the world who are still doing it for that particular reason. And where you see any country where they are pulled out of poverty, that child marriage thing ceases to exist. It disappears. Now, we're not talking about sex. That's a separate topic. I'm talking about the contract of marriage. Sex and younger people, I will talk in my next video. But even that isn't what you think it is. And I will explain, just like I've explained in this video. So in short, this is what I want you to consider. If your liberal values went back in time, you would in fact be selling your daughter, and you said, no, she's going to marry at 18, and that's, the moral thing to do. You would in effect be ensuring that your daughter lived the highest risk of being destitute, enslaved, or killed, and along with her children. So your liberal values wouldn't be able to exist in a pre-modern time. But Islam did exist. Islam existed. It adopted that belief system because it was the moral belief system of its time. And when things changed, Islam said, great, things are better. It didn't say, no, you have to go backwards. It said it's perfectly fine because and a benefit for society to move forward. So again, there's nothing there that they can point their finger at Muslims and claim some sort of moral superiority. I mean, they're so backward that if you pressure them about their own answers, they will actually call their own ancestors immoral instead of trying to look at why they behaved the way they did, because they're so desperate to feel superior. The thing now that they're going to argue is, but what about the sex thing and the damage to the child? I will take that on, don't worry, in my next video. See you there. And if anyone disagrees, happy to have a debate on it, or leave your comments in the comment section. I know it's a controversial subject, but Muslims need to address it. We got to stop, making excuses. We are the moral on the moral high ground. They aren't.